Good afternoon and welcome to our Public Works meeting for today, August 15th. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? I'm seeing none. I need someone to approve our agenda. Approved by His Worship, second by Councillor Tweel. Adoption of our minutes from July the 26th, 2023. Yes. Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Tweel. Any business arising out of those previous minutes? Technical difficulty delay. Just one moment. Thank you, Rory. Go ahead, Your
Yes.
Worship.
Madam Chair, just looking through the minutes, I thought in the last meeting I was asking about the reconstruction of Beach Street and the fence that was going to be installed. And Madam Chair, I know that our chief engineer did send out some drawings. But my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when we had the meeting at the Eastlink Centre, my understanding was that the fence was to go parallel with the sidewalk, the newly constructed sidewalk, to the existing sidewalk on Park Street. And if you go back to, now it's all Beach Street, the original Beach Street, it was going back to the original Beach Street. So I'm just trying to get a clarification on it.
I don't see that as business arising or minutes because that's not, we didn't talk about it last month. But I think we can probably get an update or when we get to business arise.
I can leave that.
Business.
I can leave that for his report if you wish.
Yeah, I think we can add that.
If you don't mind,
Are
Madam
you-
Chair.
I can speak to that now, if you'd like.
Okay.
Just go over quickly. So I do not recall that commitment ever being made at the open house. There was questions on it and how we would treat it as the road configuration down there has completely changed. By putting that fence along the backside of that sidewalk, what we'd actually do is it really have a negative impact on the Eastlink Centre because as that is the primary lot to be used once the lot at the Eastlink Centre, which is quite small, that's where everyone parks for any big major events. So it would have a really negative impact on that. As you've probably seen in previous email, I have shared with a number of council a new proposal on how to a new access for folks to the Park Street parking lot. And I know that'll be discussed in future meetings coming up with various groups. That, I think, is the most optimal solution at the end of the day because we completely eliminate that access to Park Street to the temporary housing from where it is now and relocate it to another area that we can better control the flow in and out of that facility and avoid Park and Beach Street altogether.
So just quickly, Madam Chair, I just put it. I'll leave it with him after I mention this point. Is that I was at that meeting along with the chair and some other councillors. I think Councillor Mattard. I thought we made it very clear, and I thought I asked a verification of what I was stating to some of the residents, what would take place. But, Mr. Adams, you know that that parking lot has been there since the almost 10 years after the Eastlink Centre opened, and it was always an open parking lot. That is, you get out of your car, you walk through the parking lot, and go up into the back entrance at the Eastlink Centre. Now we have a sidewalk. But there are many parking lots in the city that doesn't have access to a sidewalk. They just walk through the parking lot. So I know we added the sidewalk to connect Beach to the Park Street, and now it's all Beach Street. But I know that I said to the residents, there will be a fence that will encircle that sidewalk or that whole connection. So I just leave that with you. I appreciate, I think you did receive the sketch of what he's planning, Madam Chair, and I believe so did Councillor Tweel and all the members of the committee. So I just we'll probably look at it when we get another opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
I think there'll be a lot more discussion on things that are going to come forward as far as how this is all going to work, so that will definitely be part of it for sure.
Chair,
Councillor Tweel.
yeah, just in the minutes, we can go back to page 3, page 4. Councillor Tweel would like to see speed bumps spread out throughout the city to make things fair. He also asked if applicants are made aware of denied applications. Manager of Public Works stated that the applicants are notified, accepted, and denied applications. Back to the first part of what I said, in terms of speed bumps being installed throughout the city of Charlottetown in terms of equity, fairness. How long has this program been in existence, Scott? Speed humps.
It's been long and around, or the deployment of speed humps long before I've been here. So I'm guessing you're probably getting 15 years, close to 15 years since it's been installed, 10 to 15 years in that range.
Well, thank you, Scott. I want to go on the record that there's an outstanding disparity and discrepancy when it comes to speed humps in this city. Now, I supported you, Scott, last month at our Public Works Committee. To do a review. I want to go on the record, I still support that review. I thought it was a good idea to, every 2 years, to take a step back. Let's look at where they're at. We had a councillor last night that said, some residents are not in favor of them. So, if we're going to look at this again, then I think we got to look at it in terms of, and I said there were statements made here last night that where you wouldn't see speed humps, where they wouldn't be permissible. But right now, the city's not treated equally and fairly in 10 wards. Some streets have three speed humps on a neighborhood street.
Okay. And
And some streets, which are major thoroughfares in this city, looking for, some type of traffic calming, speed humps, traffic enforcement, can't seem to get it. So that really blows my mind. So Scott, I look forward to what you're going to present here in September or at a later date, but please take those points under consideration, because I'm not saying it's you, Scott, but what I'm saying is the city is not treated equally and fairly, and hasn't been for some time.
Okay, Councillor Tweel, thank you. We're going to look at the warrant criteria. Scott, you're going to tie this back. I think we heard last night maybe a reset, reevaluate whether we have to reapply every 2 years. There'll be a little bit more discussion that you'll bring to our committee, hopefully next month, and we'll be able to move
Is that
from
when
there.
you're doing, I was just going to ask that question for this deferral last night that went 10-0.
Yes.
You're going to
I'm
bring this
asking
forward.
Scott to bring kind of back, take the feedback we've heard,
Yeah,
have another look,
yeah.
tie it to the criteria that's been set out already as
Yeah.
far as what we determine for areas, and then bring back to committee with hopefully a little bit more clarity to move to council for
Yes.
approval.
Madam
Yes,
Chair, just for the record, you moved the deferral?
I did.
Yes, and it was seconded by Councillor Bernard?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but it went 10-0, so it is coming back to us.
It is coming
you very
back.
much. Thank
This
you.
is something that they are, from staff perspective, they're wanting us to look at and consider. So we will definitely be taking that back. Yes, okay, thank you. We're going to move right into reports, and the first report, and I know what I had brought this up myself because I had residents looking for crosswalk paintings, in particular, when we look at our active transportation trails where they stop at intersections to see whether we could actually put crosswalks on the street, and I've read the report, but Scott, I'll let you present that report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, the reason why I came to committee, it's more than a one-off operational matter. It impacts public works operations. It also impacts liability to the city as well. We need to, just like any traffic control device, and line painting is considered that, it needs to be applied uniformly across the city so that drivers have a level of expectancy, and pedestrians, of course, as they use any of the public right-of-way facilities, roads and sidewalks in particular. So in Canada, we, as well as any other municipality in provincial government, follows TAC, or has their own manual, which is essentially a photocopy of TAC, which is Transportation Association of Canada. And this group has manuals and guidelines on everything you can imagine, from school zones to how we design roads to all this good, to anything to do with constructing roadways and public right-of-way. And so we treat these crosswalks, we look at the guidelines and try to identify when you will mark out crosswalks. And there are a number of criteria that we look at when it comes to marking out crosswalks. And it's at the bottom of the first page of the report. But we typically look at if there's a conflict area between vehicles and pedestrians, if it's on a main pedestrian route, or at routes where it is reasonably difficult for a pedestrian to cross due to vehicle flow, and we're talking about high vehicle flows. Is it a major school walking path? Is it a mid-block crossing? And then were there at locations where the intended place to cross for pedestrian isn't clear or visible to someone that's using the area. So we apply these factors when we are determining if a crosswalk should be marked. And the location you has for us to look at, it wouldn't meet this criteria. And really, it's although McCrae, yes, it does have a medium volume of traffic. We wouldn't consider high. It's not low by any means, but it's medium flow traffic. There is low to moderate use of the pathway. It's very clear where people are to cross this path, across Horseshoe, across the trail. It wouldn't warrant us to paint. And the reason why we again go through these criteria, because if we start adjusting our criteria, then we have to go back and look at every other crossing that we have in the city, because we need to make sure that if there is ever if there's ever an accident, which we hope there never is, but there are, these are things lawyers and experts look at. How does the city, is it a standard process that we apply road marking, signage? So those are things that we are looking at. There's also the operational component of this as well. If we add more crosswalks, more painting, we're going to have to look at additional crews of painting. Well, that's not easy, because on these crews, you need to have someone that has a lot of experience. It's not, you can just hire anyone to do this type of work. They need to have some training to use the equipment. They have to use good judgment, be able to lead a crew. There's things like that. And that's also a challenge as right now. We've been able to date, as the city grows, the additional line marking we've been able to manage. Joey's done a great job. But if we have to go in, look at, adding another 50 to 100 crossings, it's easily another crew. And those are things that we're looking at as well. And again, we're looking at what other jurisdictions are doing as well. They're following these guidelines. When we look at examples in cities that we're familiar with, like Fredericton and Moncton and St. John or Halifax, they're doing the same thing. Streets like this, they would not put a crosswalk marked crossing just because it would not meet the warrants. And then again, marked crossings, do drivers even pay attention? Is there a value to it? Is it really going to enhance driver attentiveness to pedestrians at these crosswalks? So yes, so that's why we wanted to bring it here, so that council, the public, are aware how we make these decisions on where we paint crosswalks in the city.
And thank you. It was a good detailed report. Maybe once we get our 5 million speed humps in the city, we'll be able to hire a crew to do the speed humps and the crosswalk paint, and
Well,
we'll
there-
kill two birds with one stone.
Right,
Yeah.
right here.
Yes, I know, Counselor Twill, I'm getting to you, dear. Go ahead.
Thank you. There's also other options beside speed humps, and we can discuss that at a later date. There are other options. We don't have to become a city of speed humps. As one senior member of the Public Works Committee says, it's enforcement, but I won't say who that was. And I agree with him. Very insightful gentleman. Scott, you said that if we were to do more crosswalks, paint more crosswalks in the city, it would require more crews, more financial commitment on behalf of the city. If we're striving to make our city a livable city, a walkable city, a safe city, so that pedestrian traffic, regardless of what the age group is, I think we have to take a serious look at that. And I believe that we should be making an investment moving in that direction, because we want our citizens to feel safe walking, cycling, people with mobility challenges, making our city much more inclusive and diverse than it already is. So I know you can't give us an answer now, but could you please flag that at a later date so we can have a discussion around that? Because I know our citizens, I mean, they're out in front of us, some of them, ahead of us as far as what we're doing as a city corporation, as a city council. They want, they want the city to be much more predictable, much more safer for pedestrian traffic, whether it's crosswalks or pathways, whatever the case may be. So I believe we need to have a general discussion about that issue at a later date. We're going to need more information, Scott, and I know you can help provide that. And I know you referenced other jurisdictions, but I'd like the city of Charlottetown to be leaders when it comes to making our city much more walkable and much more predictable, and a lot more safer for our students that are commuting back and forth to school, senior citizens, and all demographics that like to get out for that, passive or active recreation using the cities right away. So please take that under consideration, and I'd like to have a discussion at a later date. Thank you.
Scott, would you have to, like when you said if you do one, you have to do them all, is that required, or could this be sort of like other things where it's kind of if a area requests something that we could put paint there as a pilot or as a trial to see if it makes a difference? I mean, paint's pretty cheap, and I appreciate what you're saying with a crew.
So yes, you would have to have a plan to go through, and any of them that, if you're changing the criteria, you'd have to have a list of all those that were required, and you would have to do it from a legal standpoint, or we open ourselves up to significant liability. When you start going outside the national guidelines, what the experts have recommended, and of course there is local engineering judgment. So that's why they're guidelines. So we look at those criteria and we look at a situation and we say, okay, we know that it might not warrant for this location, but there is this other hazard. Maybe the homes are too close to the road. It creates sightline issues, and we know that as local engineers. But as a general guideline, it's supposed to try to fit. It's a one shop fits all kind of solution here. So we have that flexibility to make those one-off decisions. But when we look at it and there's wide open visibility, it's not a wide crossing, things like that, it doesn't fall outside of like the criteria that we would typically look at. So if an accident ever did happen and we had some painted lines here and some painted lines over there, then that increases the liability on the city and the percentage that the city would have to pay in the event of an accident. So those are things that, as we put anything out in the city, those are things that we're always thinking about. What is the liability? What is the ramifications on a city corporation if we do this, and how we can work within the law to protect the city and protect our residents. So it's a balancing act for sure. And that's why anytime we even do a pilot, we have to do our homework. We have to make sure, we look at all the options and have a well-defined plan. Because again, lack of documentation, lack of planning can land you in hot water if something ever arises. So those are the things that we need to be careful of when we do this type of work.
Sure, but I think, and Councillor Twill, to your point, we can probably continue to look at as we progress, works with our environment and sustainability on these multi-pathways and stuff, and maybe what needs to be included, so we can come back and have
For
some
sure.
different discussion.
And the big change is a lot of physical changes to infrastructure.
Yeah.
You're going to see, hopefully this fall, we're currently working on our 5-year plans, as we have to have for future planning purposes. You're going to see 5-year capital plans for, we're going to update the sidewalk and multi-use pathway 1, which is already here. We're going to update our, street rehabilitation, all those plans that have connection to AT in one way or another. The biggest challenge right now is just the infrastructure costs. It really, truly is. There's a lot of costs associated with upgrading facilities to make them safe. One thing we have to remember is signage and paint people don't really pay attention to. We know that. There's studies out there. You can put up all the signage in the road. You can paint the entire road. And there's still large portion of the population, after about 3 months, they start ignoring all that stuff and just are on autopilot getting from point A to point B. Yeah. The only way to really correct driver behavior and to help pedestrians is physical infrastructure upgrades. That's the gold standard, and that's what we're always working towards, and is always on the back of our mind when we are proposing this infrastructure upgrade to you folks.
Yeah. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just following up on what you talked about, the guidelines. I believe Mr. Adams, he can correct me if I'm wrong, he's referring to TAC guidelines, so that's the Transportation Association of Canada. And just as he said, they are guidelines. They're not regulatory statute of regulations. It's not law, it's guidelines. So you try to be consistent and keep within the guidelines. But, Madam Chair, last night in the report that was presented by Councillor Bernard on environment and sustainability, the council approved city staff leading the formation of a capital region after transportation committee and City of Charlottetown's staff representation in this committee. This is going to be important about how we do work with each other within the region, so there's consistency, because I believe Cornwall and Stratford may not use the same lens that we do when it comes to tax. So there'll be consistency, and I think to just say that if you can have all the markings you want across roads and streets and so forth, it doesn't matter. Well, if you don't have them, it does matter. So I think there's a need or a balance on how we do it, but I appreciate that you did point out these are guidelines. So court of law will see guidelines as just to keep within the lines of what we're doing, consistent with other jurisdictions across the country. So I appreciate the chief engineer's thought on that.
So it's something we will be able to revisit then, maybe, once some of this working group gets together. Okay, thank you. The sections, yes, B was the truck route signage. I know we've had a lot of inquiry about Mount Edward Road being a non-traffic or a non-truck road. I also know we've learned Brackley Point Road is a no truck route road apparently. So I'm just wondering how these trucks get to Charlottetown, but I did read the report and maybe you can provide a summary.
Absolutely. So this report focuses mostly on Mount Edward Road, but again, it's here at committee to advise that we do have a truck route, designated truck route in the city. It is under the traffic bylaw, and which is bylaws administered by this department or this committee. And so we're going to look at updating it, of course. It hasn't been updated for a number of years. So we're going to look at it over the winter months to see if it requires any updating. Not sure if it does or not. Again, things have changed in the city. We have different land uses, and that's something that we got to look at as also the official plan comes into update, how that may impact the truck routes. So those are all things that we're going to have to look at in the near future. But for today, we are going to follow, of course, the traffic or the traffic bylaw and the current truck route, and the big challenge is enforcement, really and truly. And the one challenge that it can frustrate folks, or they may not be aware, is if it is the most direct route between point. If say if a vehicle or a truck is making a local delivery, so if there's construction in the non-truck route area, trucks are permitted to be there. They have to get to where they're going. We have permitted them. So that is one challenge that people may not be aware of. We don't know where these trucks are coming from point A to point B. So that's challenge number one, and we can't track that. So it has to be a police enforcement matter. We do work with the police on these types of requests that we get. But one thing as Public Works is we can help augment is the signage, because the challenge is for enforcement, if the signage isn't there and well documented how the signage is put up, it has a hard time standing up in a court of law if it ever gets challenged. So we have to make sure we have our no truck signs strategically placed. And there's no truck signs. Then there is also permitted truck signs. So it looks like a truck with a green circle around it, and then we put arrows on them, and that shows when you're heading up to an intersection, you can go through, or you can go left or right. So we put those signs up in advance of an intersection as a vehicle approaches, so that if any truck, whether they're we have lots of truck drivers who are out of province coming in our city, we can fully guide them through the city with these signs, and that's what we're working on now. So right now, first priority is getting Mount River Road up to the standard that we see fit, that will hold up in a court of law, and then we'll look at every other route in the coming weeks and figure out that plan and what signs are missing, and then hopefully get those installed later this fall.
Thank you, Scott. Is there any questions for Scott on this topic right now? So we'll have another update once that scan of the city's done. Okay. So right now, our trucks, I guess it depends if they're delivering and they have to, they are allowed, even though it's a non-truck route. I just want to clarify this because we've had a lot of inquiry. They are permitted on Mount Edward Road to be able to get into town to do their deliveries.
They're permitted right now, trucks come from the bypass down to Towers Road. That is a permitted truck route, and it's for access to the mall on Mount Edward Road. Beyond that, if a truck goes beyond Towers Road towards town, they are only to be there if they're doing a local delivery. So if there's a construction site in the area, some other store, delivery vehicle, any of those within that area, they are permitted to be there. If they're going downtown, no, they have to use one of the other routes, which would be probably University Avenue, or I believe, I don't have the map in front of me, but there's a couple streets a couple routes that we have from the bypass to get you into the downtown core. And so truck drivers are supposed to be familiar with local bylaws, but also that's where the signage comes into play as well, so that we can help direct trucks through the city on the designated truck routes.
And I see that there's going to be some discussion, educational information to help truck drivers learn and adapt to the routes as well. So maybe some reminder on that. I know.
And that's what we're hoping to figure out what and how we can get that out. Because again, the challenge is we're faced with a lot of out of province truckers, right? They're not familiar with the local routes or anything like that, and they're relying on GPS. Well, the GPS may take them the wrong route. So those are things that we will have to look at, whether it's working with the Atlantic Trucking Association, getting the message out to them. There are a number of avenues, and it's just working with our comms team here. What is that messaging, and how do we get it out to the trucking companies out there?
Absolutely. I know there was truck drivers coming in from McDonald's into Dart Drive into Barber Circle. They had a rough time making those turns when they GPS took them in. Councillor Tweel.
Yeah, thank you. Scott, I think we need to embark upon a public awareness campaign that would begin with contacting the trucking industry, all of the businesses that truck goods and services here to our city, whether it's in province or outside of province. Millions of dollars have been spent on the bypass, and we need to encourage the trucking industry that are shipping goods and services, regardless of what those materials are, to better utilize the bypass as opposed to cutting down Spencer Drive, going through Towers Road for no apparent reason. I think we need to really be a little more, I don't know if the word is committed, more diligent in our efforts, or a lot more enthusiastic when it comes to having those discussions with the trucking industry. So I think the sooner we do that, and maybe even some signage saying, this is not a shortcut to get to Brackley Point Road. Bypass was built to handle all of that traffic on the periphery of the city, especially the trucking industry, but other traffic as well, vehicle traffic as well. If we can cut down some of that traffic that's cutting through there by 25 or 35%, I think that'd be a real advantage. So I bring that forward. I tried to bring that up before, but that's something we need to take a very serious look at, is trying to discourage them from using these, these particular streets as a shortcut, again, to get to Brackley Point Road, but using the bypass. That's why the bypass was built.
Thank you, Councillor Twill, and I think that was, it'll be part of the full package as the manager comes back and being able to update us with everything that's happening.
But could I just add, Madam Chair?
Yes?
I know a lot of trucks are from Quebec and New Brunswick. And you being from New Brunswick, which is a bilingual province, in some ways will be obligated at some point under TAC to provide both languages. Would that be not an issue that you may have to encounter, Mr.
Most of the
Adams?
signs are pictures. Same language.
Yeah, so most of the traffic signage are already pictures, right? They're universal pictures
Right.
across North America. Until we're actually legislated by the province, it's a provincial legislation. As you mentioned, yes, being from New Brunswick, yes, it's legislated by the province that everything has to be bilingual when it comes to provincial matters and municipal matters, I guess, at that case in the province of New Brunswick. But we are not. We're just legislated as English province, so our messaging doesn't have to be bilingual. But we have already started doing some of those changes, like street signs and such. We have both the French and English on our street signs.
But again, to be fair to our Quebec drivers and New Brunswick drivers, is that, we're going to put a lot of verbiage on our signage to say, please don't go up this street. It should, we may have to look at that. Just a thought for you, just a thought.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Okay.
Chair, just one other point.
Last point, Councillor Twill, yeah?
Yeah. Scott, I've noticed in the downtown where you have a lot of these major trucks that are, again, delivering goods and services. I know one time at the old city council, long before I came to city council, used to, I don't know if there was a policy or if there was a bylaw in place where they tried to encourage trucking, the truckers that are delivering goods and services to, restaurants and local businesses in the downtown or in the 500 lots, whatever the case may be. There used to be certain hours where they would be able to, or be permitted to be able to deliver their goods and services. Is that something that we could look at, from a very diplomatic, very friendly way to get them to deliver their goods and services a lot earlier as opposed to noon hour? I noticed, some great big tractor trailers are there, and we have the outdoor decks, and they're pulling right up beside the outdoor decks, and really, it's not really a good mix. Is that something we could look at in terms of working with, for example, food distributors, produce, poultry, meats, any type of service that's being trucked into the city? Can we not work with that industry to encourage them to make arrangements to deliver their respective products to the businesses a lot earlier in the day, as opposed to 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock?
So what we can do is, if that is the wish of the committee, for us to take us back and review what, review what options we have to control or to reduce this congestion, it's something we can do. I do advise folks, though, I know this has been talked about previously, and I've been around and heard some discussions from some of the business owners. The challenge with limiting delivery times is you look at some of the small businesses down here, they're operated by a family, one or two individuals. If we limit deliveries, for instance, to a restaurant to between 6 and 9 in the morning, some of these restaurants don't open until 11. So it could really have a negative impact on a lot of these businesses, because there are a lot of small businesses out there. I also look at pubs and bars. They're open till 2. By the time their staff get out of here, it's 3 or 4 in the morning. They don't have staff back in until the next evening. So there's a lot of those logistics issues with the business community in the downtown area, just because of the nature of the business. It's not like your Home Depots and your mall traffics, where they're open from 7 in the morning, so they have staff in there at 6 a.m. stocking. So that's when they receive their goods. Those big corporations already have that built into their business model. But the small, small family-owned businesses, the smaller restaurants, they would be negatively impacted by this, because they would have to have someone come in at 6, 7 a.m. to receive an order, which would, and they're not open. So there's a number of, I guess, I want to caution you folks, if we want to go down this route, we can look at it further if it is the wish of the committee to do that. But I just caution you on restricting that.
No,
I'm
Madam-
going to
could I-
just wait.
I know, Madam Chair.
No, just both of you, just for a moment. Perhaps Wayne Long, who sits with Downtown Inc. on that committee, could bring this conversation up. They could get some feedback to see if this is something we need to look at as a committee, and we'll move forward from there. But that's new business today that we're not going to spend any more time
But
on.
Madam Chair, just a
Yeah.
word of caution. My sister-in-law sat on this council back in 2003 to 2010. She brought it up by the encouragement by some of the councillors. There was a lot of outcry, just as the chief engineer said, from the mom and pop businesses that said, no, we can't do it. So be careful what you ask for. And if there's a councillor or councillors want to move a resolution to look at doing that, let them do that. But I think we better take the caution flag that our chief engineer just waved. Thank you.
Always, and we're just going to look at.
know, can I-
Just hang on, please. I think what we're hearing is that I think your point was taken. We're going to have someone get some feedback from the Downtown Business Corps, come back to us to determine, because it wasn't wanted in 2003, doesn't mean it's not something that might work in 2021, and we'll have more discussion at that
Right.
time. Okay?
Just to clarify.
Go ahead.
I'm not talking about eliminating. What I'm talking about is, can we not, we're going to have discussions with the trucking industry anyway, right? There has to be discussions about routes that they're not permitted to use, encourage them to use the bypass. Maybe that's another weapon in the toolbox. Like, what would it take? It's called encouragement, trying to work collaboratively with them. It's not talking about eliminating. It's what can we do to make it a much better atmosphere in our downtown. I just cited an example. People are on the deck. They're having, they're having their lunch. 18-wheeler pulls up beside it. It's not a good mixture. So can we at least have those discussions to try to encourage the trucking industry? If you can get there a little earlier, there might be some logistics and things that need to be worked out, but I'm just trying to enhance and improve the experience of people that like to come to the downtown.
Thank you,
particularly
Councillor
the tourism industry.
Yep. So Scott, you can come back to us with kind of that. So we have 3 tenders today. We have the 2023 Street Resurfacing Package C, where we approved extra money to go out. We have the East Royalty Road Multi-Use Pathway tender, as well as the Terry Fox Drive lighting. So the first tender is for the Island Construction Limited in the amount of $1,098,946 plus all applicable taxes be accepted. It was lowest bid. We've worked with them before. It's a recommendation from the staff. Can I have someone move this to go to
Moved.
council? Moved by His Worship, seconded
Nope.
by Councillor Twill.
Question.
There's a question, you have a question on
Question
it?
called.
Yeah,
Wanna
we don't
vote
need
on
to
it.
vote. Okay, all those in favor. I figure if you're moving and he's seconding,
Okay.
hopefully, we're
Thank you.
good.
Next one.
Our second tender is for Burton McKay Backhoe Services to be awarded the tender for the East Royalty Road second phase of the multi-use pathway for the amount of $1,146,655.49. Be accepted. Again, lowest tender. Staff is happy with the work in past. I need someone to move this to go to
Moved.
council. Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Twill.
Madam Chair, just on
Yes.
this resolution, we've been doing, like, this is great. This has been asked for years, and this will add a lot and build that connection between, I believe, McWilliams Road, around St. Peter's, McCrae, East Royalty Road. Excellent. I want to thank the department for doing that. It's no different than what we did for Towers Road. But, I've been asking, and now the new counselor from Ward 3, I know it's not part of this department, but we've been asking now for 4 years for a pathway, an ATP, between Brighton Road and Terry Fox Drive, and I know it falls under Parks, but I'm just wondering if Public Works and Parks can get together and look at that. That's all I ask. I don't need an explanation right now. It's just, these pathways are very important, and you know what? As was said earlier, if we want more user, pedestrian, friendly streets, roads, ATPs, this is the way to go. Not sidewalks, but ATPs. So just keep that in mind, Mr.
As a point,
And I
for
really,
sure.
I want to push for this. I'll call the question.
Okay, we're moving it forward. Everybody's in favor to move it, yeah?
Good.
Okay. And our final tender today is public tender for the Terry Fox Drive lighting. Hanson Electric to receive the submission of $159,700 plus all applicable taxes. Again, the lowest bid. I think they've done lots of work with Hanson in the past.
Moved.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Twill.
Question?
Questions called. Everybody's in favor?
I do have a question.
You can
Oh.
go ahead, Councillor Twill.
Are the streetlights, are the streetlights that are there now, are they going to be eliminated?
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a couple overhead streetlights on Maritime Electric poles. Yes, they'll come down. And this would be the ambient lighting, ambient and safety lighting for this portion of Fitzroy Street. That's correct.
Okay, just a follow-up question. Some of the comments I've heard about the old-fashioned lanterns, that's what we're doing here, right, Scott?
Yeah.
Is that the old-fashioned lanterns are really not that bright as, the traditional type street lighting. And if we're trying to, make our community safe, that's one of the concerns I keep hearing from the old-fashioned lanterns, is that it makes that part of the city or that neighborhood or that street a lot darker. So if we're trying to brighten things up for safety for pedestrians, for all demographics, how do you address that, Scott?
So that's a very good question. So I guess there's a couple of things that we need to be aware of. So we have the old style of light bulbs, which are essentially an incandescent bulb, I believe, in the older ones. Yes, thank you. Sodium. High pressure sodium? No, low pressure on those ones, I think. But anyway, those essentially just like any standard light bulb, the old style, they just radiate light in all directions from their light bulb. And so yes, they do have a darker look because they are essentially about a 3,000 3,000 Kelvin. So that's the measure of like warm light versus bright white. So 3,000s on the low end towards what we call warm white, and that has historically been the downtown choice to keep it the historical nature. Now, mind you, some of the issues you may see on some of the streets, like Queen Street, is it's a very wide street. So Back in the day when they were first installed, they may have met standards at that point in time. If we reviewed it, we may have to, if we were to redo Queen Street, we may actually have to look at adding additional streetlights, just because the standards have changed over the years. This one meets current standards. It will give a really good wash over the street and over the sidewalk. And the nicer thing with the LEDs now, they're designed and constructed so that the LED light is angled. So how the light projects out of the light head now is much different than what you'd see with the style you see on Queen Street. So we get less washing of homes because we're projecting the light towards the street and sidewalk. So this block, you should see actually some big improvements, because with the overhead lighting that's there on the street now, there's a lot of trees, and so the trees are impacting, causing shadowing on this portion of the street right now. And I believe we only have 2 on the street, 1 on either end. This is, I think, 6 light poles along the street, so a lot more light. Should be a lot brighter and better for safety for pedestrians walking in this at nighttime, and drivers as well.
We need to be able to figure out a plan for lighting in the city anyway, because Maritime Electric, I know, are behind, and I feel for them, but we have subdivisions that have been 9 months with people living in them, and they still don't have streetlights. So we have to put a little push on, and I know it's been challenging, and I know it's hard, but prior to putting people into homes and things, I think we need to have infrastructure in
point.
place. And we keep improving, a development and all of these things, but we're not able to keep up with necessary infrastructure on safety. So are we comfortable moving the Terry Fox
Yep.
Drive lighting onto council for approval?
Yep.
Everybody?
Yep.
Okay, in front of you, you also have an updated copy of the capital projects list. You can have a minute just to glance at that. I'm sure you did prior to coming to the meeting anyway, if there was questions. Looks pretty good. Things are moving along.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Your Worship?
it's always great to have you at the chair because you're so flexible with us.
There's no flexibility if you have something you...
But I do want to thank Albert and his team, because over the last year or so, I've been always asking Albert, when will we finish the McAleer Drive accessory building? I said, luckily you guys were not building the bridge across the 2 points, but he said, Philip, I don't take that lightly. I don't take that lightly, but I want to thank the team. The building and what it's going to be, net zero. Albert, well done. I hope we can do the same for the Simmons Aqua Arena facility. I know it's going to be net zero ready, but some point in time down the road, that's the way we have to go, because
Don't rush them, and they'll do it the right way. You just got to be
saying
patient,
that.
Your
No,
Worship.
don't. Patience.
Good job, Albert.
Thank you, Albert.
And team.
And pass it on to Sable Irk. Thank you very much.
Under new business, I know I'm going to give you a minute to think about what you'd like Scott to be ready to talk about next month. One thing, I know you're going to be meeting with Island Waste Watch Management again, Scott, and if you want to just provide a quick update and hopefully be able to come back with some next steps in September, but we did receive some information on kind of what our public works staff is dealing with.
Yeah, so I'll if you haven't got copies yet, we'll share copies of the photos just to show, just to let it set in with council, the kind of the what our crews are faced with when they show up on site to clean up an unsightly. It's quite definitely unhealthy in terms from a public health perspective in some cases, and there's a lot of hazards and dangerous items being picked up as well, and a lot of unknowns in these garbage bags. So we'll share those photos. In regards to another update, I hope to have a better report come September. We've had a second meeting with and officially have struck a committee now of folks from Island Waste Management, from the Department of Public Health, as well as city officials, to work together, and to our game plan right now is identify 1 or 2, frequent flyers, the properties that we're having some trouble with, and hoping to to come up with a plan and to work with that owner to figure out, okay, how can we fix this issue? We know some owners, we might not have any luck with that. and that's okay. That's going to also become part of this working group as well. How do we long-term, or how do we work with those individuals? But there are some individuals that we are aware, Island Waste has worked with a lot of these, some of these bigger properties. And a lot of, especially that they find that what really helps if there is a person that lives on the site full-time who is a building manager, those are the people that they can really get to and really help and make some changes, and they've seen some positive changes. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to facilitate a positive change versus being heavy-handed, of course. But there are, we will come up with that plan on how that, to work with the owners and the building managers, but if that doesn't work, then there will be another option that we are working towards. Now, just keep in mind as well, now that we have Department of Public Health, Department of Health on board, they have legislation that they can enact fines for health violations. So in the short term, that is one option that we are going to be looking at if we have to. So just keep that in mind as well. So you should see more action and an updated report in September on some progress. But we've struck that committee. We have a bit of a game plan now, meeting again in September to identify the one or two properties to tackle first, because we don't want to try to go after them all at once. We want to come up with a good plan, fine-tuned plan that can work for one or two, and then roll that out to everyone else. In the short term, of course, we're still working with our city bylaw officer to do unsightly cleanups. Again, we'll circulate the photos to show you what we're dealing with. It is quite a mess. Thankfully, we do have a contractor that we are working with as well to help clean up some of the major ones, which has definitely helped in the workload, from what I've been told. And it keeps the issues of safety concerns away from our staff, and they're trained to do this stuff, so that's what we contract part of that work out to them. So there have been some updates, and we're continuing to move forward in this file, as it is a priority for us as well, because it's a safety hazard for everyone.
Madam Chair.
Hopefully comes into his worship's
Madam
enforcement
Chair,
somewhere.
I know that this is a new business. I'm glad you got this on the agenda. It looks like that the garbage or the waste collection, especially the waste collection, has progressively worsened in the last 9-12 months, and I don't know what it is, but if I look at IWMC's webpage, new waste watch fees, all of us that own a home, we're paying $213 a year for pickup. So if you own an apartment building, I don't see the commercial fee. So the fees are being paid, and I know there is a responsibility on the landowner to ensure that the sorting is properly administered, but that doesn't appear to be happening from what I see here. But could I ask, please, let's get the summary proceedings bylaw so we don't have to get back here every month with a list of unsightly properties to give the powers to our bylaw enforcement officer to go out and enforce what is really a summary proceeding bylaw issue. Just the ticket's there online. We just have to expand it. I know we have to go through legal issues, but let's get it done. I've been asking for this, 3-4 years? It's like the walkway from Brighton Road to Terry Fox Run. It's ongoing.
It sounds like we have to do some work, and whether it goes through strategic, I know it's in planning right now, but you can help me from what I'm understanding. It comes into, we just don't have that teeth at the municipal level, where it has to be more at the provincial level. And we have to be able to partner with our partners at the province to be able to develop some of this. I don't know if that would come through planning still, or do we need to work and negotiate through strategic, these silos, places that we figure all this out. But from what I'm understanding, the holdback is that we just don't have the teeth.
But Madam Chair, in one of our July 10th meeting, there was comment made by our chair of planning that we just don't have the teeth in our act. We received an email the next day from Municipal Affairs pointing out in the Act, the Municipal Government Act, where we can enforce or establish a summary offense ticketing system or enhance our summary proceedings bylaw. Like,
I'm with you. To me, I
Look,
don't know why we
I-
have bylaws if we can't enforce them, but maybe I don't know, would that be police, Eleanor? Would that be planning? Would that be, and again, we talked about why can't it be all of it? Because policing and planning, and can it not just be enforcement?
Well, that's what the summary proceedings bylaws. It has for
Yeah.
dog licenses,
So where would that
noise
fall under,
license.
though? It wouldn't fall under Public Works. It would.
No, it falls under strategic priorities. It would fall under planning,
Okay.
or could. What's that?
It's under police right now.
Yeah.
Planning is looking at it from a short-term rental perspective in terms of how to enforce the licensing part of it. But there's the larger piece of it, which is under police, because that's where bylaw currently is. Where we also need to stop with the lists coming forward to council. So that needs to be looked at. It's a capacity issue.
Yeah.
That's it. They're working through different things they need to get done. Other demands that are on them right now.
Yes.
And that one's just not rising to the top.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, but I think we know it's in the air somewhere that once we deal with the more pressing concerns, then we can look at. Got to keep doing it. I think we're knowing where we're gonna have to look at budget time, what we have to do.
Well, I
Any other-
appreciate that you're working with, doing this with this proposed meeting with IWMC. It's a, it's a good first
Scott,
start.
for
I really
sure.
appreciate that.
Yep.
And let's put the cards on the table because we're a big customer to IWMC.
Sure
We
are.
don't, a lot of our waste, compost, recyclables are not sorted, so all of it goes into one, which is what, $210 a ton? Must be there in that area.
Yeah, so there's a couple different island wastes.
we need to do
the
better.
issues. And I guess the challenge that we face as legislation in the province, right? These units, multi-residential units, have to sort. If they do not sort, the legislation says the onus is on both the resident of the building and the property owner. So
Right.
there's a combination in there. Whereas larger commercial groups like restaurants, for instance, I think because, and don't quote me on this, my guess is because we get tourism and such, people aren't familiar with sorting, there's a bigger fee that these businesses pay, and essentially that waste gets picked up and gets sorted. And those are done by contractors, so it's not done through Island Waste, it's we pay a contractor to do the sorting for us. That's really what it is. Island Waste legislation, this is what I'm told, is everything has to be sorted.
Right.
So everything else is done by contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They go in and sort the garbage.
Okay.
Any new in business that we want added for Scott for next month? Is there anything that's pressing that's coming
Just,
up?
again, Public Works, a neighbor of mine, the other morning discovered a needle by the door of her vehicle. She called police. Police said, please phone Public Works. And your Public Works staff were there within 5-10 minutes, used the proper equipment to pick it up, and found the service very professional. So again, big thanks. And Madam Chair, I want to give you thank you for pushing forward on the Kerry Wynn Way. It's very much appreciated by Ocean 100. I spoke to Jennifer Evans last night, and she said, I want to do a big shout out for the staff in Public Works, yourself as chair, and the staff here at City Hall, because it's something that didn't go through its procedure or process. Just asking, you have voix Kerry Wynn Way. Je sais c'est les deux langues, but honorary, c'est juste en anglais. So you're going to do it honorary? Oh, in this,
Yeah, we'll likely put it, since we make our street signs all bilingual, we will put it honorary.
honorary. Thank you. Thank you again, Madam Chair. Very appreciated.
Okay. If there is anything else that comes up before our next meeting, you could at least maybe email Scott or myself, and we'll have it added give them at least a couple weeks to add something to the agenda. So the only other thing today is to put for a motion for adjournment. Moved and seconded. Councillor Twill, I had 1 hour. That's great. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you very much.